Do you have multiple office locations or remote employees where people off-site need to connect to your network? Good thing for virtual private networks, or VPNs. We'll talk about how to synchronize network settings to keep those connections strong next. A VPN extends a private network across a public network to let users send and receive data as if their device was directly connected. Let's walk through how to configure a site-to-site VPN connection between a pair of RV340 series routers. Starting with your router at the local site, log into the web interface and choose VPN, then site-to-site. Click Create a site-to-site VPN. Make sure the Enable box is checked. Enter the name of the connection in the connection name field. Now choose the security settings of the connection from the IPsec profile dropdown. IPsec profiles are created in the IPsec profiles dropdown under VPN. You can choose the default or create your own. Choose the interface to be used by the local site router. In our case, let's choose WAN 1. Now we specify the endpoint of our remote site. We can do this using several different methods. Using a static IP lets the local router use the static IP address of the remote router when establishing a VPN connection. If you choose this option, make sure the remote router is also configured with the same option. Otherwise, you can use the fully qualified domain name of the remote router or the dynamic IP address of the remote router. I'll choose static IP for this example. Since we are using static IP, we need to enter the IP address of the WAN interface of the remote router. Click the radio button for the Internet Key Exchange, or IKE, authentication method that you need. I'll select Pre-Shared Key. Choosing certificate means a certificate would be used for authentication. The certificate would need to be installed separately. Since I chose Pre-Shared Key, I'm going to enter that for the VPN connection. You have the option of unchecking the Enable Minimum Pre-Shared Key complexity box if you want to use a simple password for the connection. You can also check the Show Plain Text When Edit box to display the pre-shared key in plain text. To protect your network, we recommend keeping pre-shared key complexity enabled. Now choose the identifier type of the local network from the drop-down list. Let's select Local WAN IP. Enter the identifier of the local network in the Local Identifier field. Since we chose Local WAN IP, it would be the public IP address for our local site in our example. Choose the IP type that can be accessed by the VPN client from the Local IP Type drop-down list. I'm going to choose Subnet. Enter the IP address of the network or host to be accessed by the VPN client in the IP address field. Then enter the subnet mask of the IP address. Choose the remote identifier type from the drop-down list. I'll choose Remote WAN IP. Enter the WAN IP address of the remote router. Choose the network type that the local network needs access to from the Remote IP Type drop-down list. Again, I'm going to choose Subnet for this example. Enter the LAN IP address of the remote network in the IP address field. Now enter the subnet mask of the remote network in the subnet mask field. Click Apply, then click Save to make your changes permanent. You have now configured the VPN settings on the local router. To configure the remote router, you will need to recall the configuration settings selected on your local router. For example, you will need to know the interface of the local and remote routers used for the VPN, the wide area network, WAN, IP addresses of both the local and remote routers, the LAN addresses and subnet masks for both the local and remote routers, the pre-shared key, password, or certificate used for the VPN connection, security settings on the local router. You will also need to add firewall exemptions for the VPN connection on both the local and remote routers. Log into the web-based utility of the remote router and choose VPN, then IPsec profiles. Configure the VPN security settings of the remote router matching the settings of the local router. On the web-based utility of the local router, choose VPN, then site-to-site. From there, follow the same steps that we walked through for configuring your local router. Keep in mind, you are configuring your remote router now that some settings are swapped. For example, the remote WAN IP will be for the local site instead of the remote site. You've now configured a site-to-site VPN connection to allow both networks to have access to resources on both sides. For step-by-step written instructions, be sure to visit the Cisco support community online and search for article ID number 5513. Thanks for watching Tech Talks from Cisco. We'll see you next time.